Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus, and tonight's video we're talking about money systems. This is a patron requested video basically asking for my opinions about money control systems and how that affects our reality here, and kind of if the whole system is a scam. And so I've heard the term used sometimes, Babylonian money magic system, the theory being that money, or basically the concept of money was invented in ancient Babylon and used as a control system because money isn't real, it's an intangible thing, and we shouldn't have to use it. And ultimately was co-opted by bigger, darker forces to use on this reality to control people. Now, I think it's a fascinating theory. I don't know if there's validity behind that or not. I can basically provide my insight, quasi-channeled intuition about how money systems operate. And my feeling is this, is that money is a sort of a naturally occurring phenomenon, because when an evolved entity, one that has a higher consciousness processing power, like a human being, does work, they want to feel rewarded for that work. And so the concept came along of just having a token to prove that you did some kind of work, and then exchanging that token with somebody else in exchange for a good or service, so that everybody feels like they did their share of work. And so that, to me, is a very naturally occurring system. We see it even occurring when you introduce money to chimpanzees and they start using it. And there's actually some funny stories about chimpanzee women, female chimpanzees, becoming prostitutes, because they like, oh, I can use this and exchange it for bananas, but how do I get more of these? Oh, okay, I'll just make myself available to the other chimpanzee, and then I'll get money, and then I can exchange that for bananas. So it does seem like it's a naturally occurring system. On the flip side of this, when you go into when you do astral projection, there are economic systems in place, and I investigated this. I've done previous videos about this, which, by the way, if you want to help support this channel, I really recommend going back, because there's I have hundreds of videos now out there, I think, on this channel with many different topics covered. All of them, none of them are time sensitive or only relevant to the day I put them up. These are all like ongoing long-term conversations to have. Any thread, any video is a continuing conversation about these topics. So you can go through the archives, find many different videos, and find many different topics, including the ones about money, for example, or economic systems. And by the way, if you're watching Afterlife Topics, where we discuss these things, if you hit that subscribe button, it really helps out. So on that note, yeah, so I've investigated sort of economic and money systems on the other side, and found, the same as Jürgen Ziva found, money is used almost like a token of gratitude, because we didn't actually need money. You can just manifest money using your mind, or using mental tools on a higher frequency. So it kind of renders a normal economic system obsolete. Yet people still use money because there's almost like an honor system in place, that this money represents that I did some kind of work and I earned it, and I was given gratitude for it. I'm going to extend that gratitude now to somebody else in exchange for a service. And so the idea is that you look at a wallet full of money, instead of being dependent on that money, you can look at all those astral $20 bills and be like, wow, I feel so warm and fuzzy about this money in my wallet, because it means there's so much gratitude given to me for work I've done. So that's the really happy version of an economic system, where people are still using dollar bills, but we're not dependent on the stupid things. Our lives are not dependent. In this sense, money wouldn't be so evil. On the flip side of that as well, on higher frequencies that we can explore through astral projection techniques or spirit communication and learning about that side, there is a commerce of trade, in the sense that if you can create something that is unique to you, and then another person cannot create that. That's the nature of being a unique soul. So you create the ultimate Cyrus machine doohickey, and then you can trade that for Bob's ultimate Bob machine doohickey, And that's a fair trade. I mean, you're providing something that no one else can actually create. It's your work, whatever it is. But it even may extend into things like real estate or properties or buildings or institutions. Kind of like here, when somebody sells a business, it's something that they've created. It's a system that they created, that they manage, and then they're going to exchange it, give it to somebody else in exchange for something else. Here it'd be large amounts of money. On that side, it may be a different system. And again, on the normal, kind of like physical-ish astral levels that a lot of us go to, you bet that there's businesses and, things that occur like here, systems in place that are operated for a specific purpose, which we call a business, but obviously it can be something more advanced than that. So where does the money system get a little bit funky in this world? Well, because we're such a strict physical existence, this particular wavelength or frequency is so strict and so physical, that we become dependent on those tokens of gratitude in order to survive. This creates a highly dependent situation where people can be manipulated very easily and are forced into what sometimes feels like a kind of slavery to money. I think underneath that, there is still that gratitude system. For example, there's patrons for this channel that help me keep this work going. So not only, do I receive that gratitude, but then it allows me to do things like buy food and survive when I'm locked down in a weird city. And this is like, I only have a couple streams of income, and then, people care about someone else to see them want to survive and keep doing what they're doing. And in exchange, I take some of the money that I get from the work I do here, and then I pay it to other people. For example, I publish cookbooks and I pay people in other countries, to work digitally. Then they have a fairly easy job to do, and then I pay them what for them is actually large amounts of money, and then they get to feed their families. And then, through my quote gratitude, and then I get in exchange something they've created, and then I attempt to then sell that to people who hopefully get value once we're finished creating all of the hopefully delicious recipes. And that's one little venture I do. And then there's many other examples of that, obviously, but that's like the very optimistic example of a capitalist system, which I support. I don't have a problem with that. I think it's good ultimately, because if it can be rooted in that kind of gratitude and not greed, then that's a wonderful thing. I don't have a problem with that. But in this reality, things go haywire fast because there's just not quite enough resources. And because of the lack of resources, that's why people start to feel like slaves to their jobs, and that they're slaves to money. What's that song? Bittersweet Symphony. You're a slave to money, then you die. People get that impression about their existences here, and I do think that there's a level of control going on, because I believe there's enough resources on the planet that we could be much more similar to the flip side, to the higher dimensional realities here in this world, if we could just manage our resources properly and be able to have enough for everybody, so that there isn't this terror of living paycheck to paycheck. I got to keep doing this amount of work to guarantee that the next month I can still be eating and providing for myself. And my solution around that has been developing a very minimalistic lifestyle. Even if I'm living abroad, and there's a spiritual lesson in that as well, of really minimizing your life, and guaranteeing you have as few expenses as possible, so that you have nest eggs and you have enough money to keep yourself going. You don't feel that anxiety. You don't feel like a slave. So I've worked really hard to accomplish that, and I really had to, for a while, live like a monk, focus on my own work, independent projects, save money, and be less attached to material things. For example, I actually recently lost several $1,000s when the stock markets crashed. I had foolishly had too much money in different stocks, and some of those stocks did not do so well. And so a lot of my savings and stuff have actually been decimated recently. And I was commenting about this actually with a friend of mine. It's just like, it's interesting how I'm not that stressed about having lost all that, because it's like, I think I've conditioned myself to not be so materially attached, so that I know even if I had nothing, I could bounce back really quickly and be satisfied and content with a bed to lay on and food, food to eat. So, again, I think that takes a lot of skill. It's really important. And sometimes that's the only way to get out of sort of the money prison systems. Because here's the kicker. There definitely are forces of different levels of power that understand that there's enough resources for everybody on the planet, but they want to keep things exactly the way it is because they want slaves. They want slave labor. They want people to feel completely dependent on them. And so that's where this idea of a Babylonian money magic system makes a little bit more sense to me. Because now we're looking at the idea that, you have a naturally occurring system of gratitude, of commerce, and then it's manipulated in such a way that a powerful institution will take away everyone's resources and say, now we have all the resources, and then we'll give you these tokens you can trade for the resources if you are our obedient slaves. So we see variations of that in our society, and all, whether it's developed Western nations or third world countries, we will see variations of that. When it comes to resources, the question is, why don't we have enough resources? Because it just doesn't actually make sense. Because I don't think the answer is socialism, and I just think that if we had a culture where everything was readily abundant and food didn't cost very much at all, and there was so much like available space and property and places to live and stay, that the price of everything could be very, very affordable, and there would be great social safety nets that will allow people, if you have a hard time, you'll know that, hey, we have so many resources, you don't have to worry about it. Then I think we'd be a very functional and more developed society. I think maybe then the ETs wouldn't be so embarrassed about us being on this planet in this part of the universe or this part of the galaxy. I think that we are the backwater of the galaxy, to be honest, because obviously we have enough to take care of everybody. So there shouldn't be this kind of stress about it. There shouldn't be like the idea that you're living on the edge of a knife if we were a more developed, more advanced society. Now, I think we may get there through technology, through concepts like 3D printing. If, let's say, you can 3D print a house in a day, then that's kind of what we're looking at for a resource-based economy. If you just have to feed it like cinder blocks and wood and some plastic materials, and a company can come out and build you a house for $2,000, then we're in a resource-based economy. Then no one's not going to have a place to stay. There's not going to be a lack of labor to provide it. Why don't we have technology like that? And well, then you're also, again, looking at those systems in place that want people to stay as slaves. So it wouldn't be feasible. It wouldn't be economically sound if we had that. The same way that it wouldn't be economically sound if we had some kind of a low-cost energy system. What would that do to gasoline prices? What would the Rockefellers and Exxon have to say about that if there was a readily available energy? Which probably there are ways to do that. You can go down that rabbit hole and then get very conspiratorial when you learn about people who have been disappeared, venturing too far down the energy area, and threatening those systems that are in place. And so we all know that these are the main problems in the world, is that you have these oligarchs and private interests, corporate interests, that want to keep systems in place so that they gain wealth, they have economic slaves that they can use, and basically have power. Now, how do you stop people from doing that? Well, that's what this work comes down to, because if you get involved in spirituality and learning about your place in the universe, learning about other dimensions, other worlds, learning about the importance of like relationships with other people, your priorities will shift, and the people whose priorities are to be, to rule the roost and have the most number of economic slaves and have the most resources and gain power here, a lot of times they're not really happy at all. They have a void in their hearts, and and if their priorities shifted, then maybe they wouldn't be the most powerful person on the block, or if they did, they'd use that power to enhance those values, so spiritual values, relationships with other people, maybe the environment, maybe enhancing resources and doing all of that. If people in positions of power realized what really mattered, what actually makes you happy, and how to spread that for other people. And there are some people out there who are like that. You have benevolent billionaires, you have benevolent leaders in this world who really are out there trying to make a difference, trying to do good for people, and trying to use their power to bring us closer toward a resource-based economy. Whether you love or hate the guy, I kind of feel like Elon Musk. I mean, he has a lot of wacky ideas. I don't really support his opinions about transhumanism, but I think he's one of those guys whose heart is in the right place. Like, he knows that a lot of this world and its pursuits of power are quite meaningless, and he knows what matters, and he knows that we need to push ourselves into a future where we're not slaves to economic systems. And he's spitballing different ways to do that, and I don't think so much is going to succeed. We need to have certain technological breakthroughs, and I think some of those technological breakthroughs are blockaded by even greater powers that will not allow certain things to manifest. And that's the really difficult thing, is how do you get through to those people? It's not going to be through force, because they have all the power in that regard. It has to be a psychological, spiritual type of battle, and ultimately they have to be motivated to find that it's not in their best interest to keep a system going. For example, it's not in their best interest to have an unhealthy population. They might, let's say some evil clandestine power. Right now, they might think, well, it's good everybody has cancer. It's good everybody's sick, because that keeps them under control, wanting to spending money on pharmaceuticals, and keeps them at the bottom, and then my power isn't threatened. People in those positions, they have to come to a point of self-realization that, power is an illusion anyway. No one is actually going to threaten me. These are just like animal instincts of survival that are dominating my thoughts. It's not real. If everyone was healthy, I'd still have money and resources. And then those healthy people would make life happier for everybody, and then happier for me. So they have to go through some kind of a process like that in order to evolve out of that way of thinking. And then humanity has to reach that point, and people in power have to make certain changes like that. How do we do that? I don't know. It's probably not by rioting and throwing bricks through small business owners' windows. Probably the way to do that involves reaching out to a lot of these clandestine powers and, finding ways to give them, I don't know, spiritual advisors. Hell, I'll be one. Hey, Rockefellers or whoever is out there, you want a spiritual advisor who can help assist you with why you feel so empty and alone and unhappy every night despite all your money and power? Well, you can hire me. I'll work really cheap because I'm not an economic slave and I don't need much money, but I'll come and hang out with you and tell you what's going on and what things you can work on, and what steps you can take to feel better about yourself and become happier, and how you can use your position of power actually to help elevate all of us, so that someday we could be living in some crazy Star Trek world with free energy systems and traveling to stars and hanging out with ETs. That could be us. If we, for one thing, if we have enough resources where people are not living terrified every day and being in a state of fear promotes crime and low vibration behavior. If everybody has the ability to take time off from work to contemplate their lives and who they are in existence, then we'd have very quickly a much more advanced society. But because of the economic systems, we don't have the ability to do that. So we need to get to a point in a resource-based economy that everybody takes time out. The pandemic, I can't even say that word, the crisis of 2020 did that in a certain way by forcing everybody inside to, contemplate life, think about things, and take a time out. And I think that did have a positive effect. But also because it was forced, because it came out of fear and uncertainty, it also had a very negative effect with high mortality rates from many, many other causes. But that's the right idea, but not in that context. So we have to be able to get there naturally, while still preserving a need to be able to work and contribute back to society, because we can't have a civilization if people are not working. But this that work has to be aligned to what people want to do. And, when people trust their intuition, they will come up with the correct answers about what they can do to help benefit society. Maybe it's being a garbage man and picking up garbage. But if you can do that from a position of already having abundance, you can gain a lot of pleasure from doing that, because you'll know it's like, I'm not forced to do this with a gun against my head. But if I drive around a garbage truck and pick up garbage, I'm keeping the community clean, because if you don't do that, you see garbage piling up. Responsible people are like, something has to be done about this, and then you'll jump in a garbage truck and the right person will go do it, and then they should be celebrated for doing it. Same with let's say fixing sewer pipes or handling the water treatment facilities in a city. Those jobs, I think, will always be there because people are responsible enough to know those jobs have to be done, even if we're in an economy where, if you work at the water treatment plant, you wouldn't necessarily be that much richer and better off than if you were sitting around at home all day, right? I think in general, when people sit around at home all day, this happens a lot with retirees, they feel itchy, like they want to go accomplish something and be useful. And that's part of the human spirit, So I don't think civilization falls apart from having a more resource-based economy. This has been me rambling about this subject. I hope you've enjoyed listening. This is definitely one of the rambling videos. I'm going to shut myself up now. Comment down below what you thought of this. You get involved with the Afterlife Topics Metaphysics Facebook group, the Afterlife Topics Reddit, r/Afterlife Topics. Maybe sign up as a patron to work with me one-on-one over at patreon.com/Afterlife Topics, or just head on over to, check the screen down in the bottom right, up here where it says Afterlife University, if you want to get involved in the private classes that I hold twice a week, private discussion groups. It's where a lot of the ideas get fleshed out for this work. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next video.